This is just, I mean, it was just out and out madness what they did. The Prophet himself, because of the circumstances, engaged in battle, in warfare, but he had a certain code of conduct that he followed. So you have to separate fanaticism, which every religion has, from the reality and the truth of that religion. These are fanatics who have lost sight of what the purpose of religion is, and they're acting, you know, on their own. What hurt me probably most of all was out of the World Trade Center attack was that here is a religion that I entered because of the universality and the tolerance that is throughout the book and throughout the sayings of Prophet Muhammad. Yet these people who did that and were behind it and planned it were just so intolerant and so disregarding of their own tenets that they could do something so horrific and kill people in such a horrible manner. It was hard. It was hard because it just, you know, that sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach. It's like, you know, after you do all this work and you try so hard, now we've got to deal with this. And the Prophet says, if you're planting a tree and the end of the world comes, you finish planting the tree. It means you just keep on going. You got to keep trying to live your life according to what you believe in. And for me and others, try to keep this from ever happening again. September 11th underscored the need to have dialogue with non-Muslims and other faiths to understand each other and to try to resolve these hot spots that fester and cause this type of hatred.
The death and destruction in New York City that was caused by this terrible, terrible act in the name of Islam has propelled the Muslim community in New York to respond in many different ways. And one of the ways that I want to respond is the way the Prophet would have responded, to just talk about the humanity which we all belong to. Since September 11th, Muslims have gone to churches, to synagogues, to schools, to explain our faith. However, people still kept asking, where are the Muslims? And why aren't they doing something about it? So I started thinking about this, and I said, what is it that we are not doing right? Maybe we need to respond in a more gentle way. So I looked around for the mildest people in our community, the artists in our community. The first person I called was Muhammad Zakaria.
Catastrophes have brought us here, but not all is lost. Through our art, we pick up all these broken pieces and try to put them back together again and make something that's going to work. Revenge, suicide bombing, things of that kind, they have no place in Islam. They must never have a place in Islam. Never, never. Islam is really a soft thing. It's not a hard thing. And so we have to approach it with softness and be soft to each other. Yassiru wa la tu'assiru, the Prophet said. Make it easy and not difficult. So we should put away all those angry words, the harsh and strident rhetoric that we've been dealing with for all these years, that we've suffered through this sweet religion with this beastly stuff, and come out into the light and be bright. Be bright in America and look in the mirror. That's what we have to do. Assalamu alaikum.
This piece is the golden rule of Islam. It is the basis of the relations between people. It means there is no harming of other people in Islam and no returning or retaliating harm for harm. And so that's why I did it, to respond through the sayings of Muhammad the man.
By the year 628, the battles that had occupied the Muslims for the preceding 4 years had come to an end.
Once the Muslims were no longer fearing the threat of total extermination. Muhammad knew that the time for fighting had stopped, and it was now time to make an extraordinary initiative, a peaceful, non-violent initiative. He astonished the whole Muslim community and the whole community of Yathrib by announcing that he was going to go on the Hajj pilgrimage. Dangerous as it was, and enormously risky as it was, about 1,000 Muslims volunteered to go with Muhammad. All the rites were fulfilled to the letter. The camels all decked in their special sacrificial garments, the men all in their white garb.
The Muslims set out on the perilous trip to Mecca, crossing the vast desert without any arms to defend themselves. When they reached Hudaybiyah, just outside the sacred area around Mecca where violence was forbidden, Muhammad surprised his followers by ordering them not to enter, but to sit and wait. He then sent an emissary to Mecca seeking permission to complete the pilgrimage.
Muhammad knew, of course, that he was putting the people of Mecca into a really impossible position, because if they forbade Arabs to enter the city and perform the rites at the Kaaba, they would be abusing their position as guardians of the holy places. The Meccans themselves did not know what to do.
When the emissary did not return quickly, the Muslims feared the worst. But Muhammad's gambit paid off. The Meccans offered to negotiate a treaty. With tensions running high, Muhammad began dictating its first line by stating his own name.
Ali was taking down the notes with the Meccan negotiator at his side, and when Muhammad began saying, "The Prophet of God," the Meccan said, "I don't believe you're the Prophet of God. I can't sign to that."
So he said, "Fine, Muhammad, son of Abdullah." And many of the Muslims felt that this was a major insult.
The Muslims sitting round at Hudaybiyah watched this in utter dismay. There was almost a mutiny. 1,000 pilgrims stood refusing to accept this. Muhammad went back into his tent where he had his wife, Salama, and he said to her, "What shall I do?" And she gave him some excellent advice. Part of the ritual of the Hajj was that you sacrifice a camel. And he went out and he sacrificed one of the camels, and somehow some kind of necessary tension was released.
The ritual sacrifice of an animal traditionally marked the end of the pilgrimage. Grudgingly, the Muslims considered the pilgrimage complete and headed back to Medina. Muhammad had compromised on every major point in the treaty, but he had won the most significant concession. In return for postponing their entry into Mecca for a year, the Muslims had secured 10 years of peace and official recognition as a political entity. Muhammad had proved himself as capable a diplomat as he was a religious leader.
There was wisdom in the treaty, because one of the things that was promised to the Muslims was protection as they moved throughout Arabia, that they would not be harmed, that they could move freely. And what was gained most greatly from that was the dawah, the teaching of al-Islam.
On the way back to Medina, Muhammad told his companion Omar, "I have received a revelation which is dearer to me than anything else beneath the sun." It said, "Surely we have given you a clear victory."
Then more and more and more people came to Islam. More and more people turned to Muhammad. It sent out a huge signal of strength, strength of purpose, utter courage, utter panache, and utter wisdom. That, of course, you could go on to fight. Of course, he could have gone on being the prophet with the sword. But there are times when to make peace is more daring, more creative, and more enduring.